survival horror genre seems to know no bounds. Aside from the foundational rules that resources are limited, developers can experiment with various ways of terrifying players and immersing them in whatever terror they can imagine. Developer SFB Games has decided to travel back to the genre's roots in Crow Country, which presents a blend of retro graphics with inspiration from Resident Evil and Silent Hill. However, it manages to leave a mark through its creative set pieces and puzzles that deliver a unique experience amidst an often saturated genre.
Noisy pixel.
From its opening, Crow Country's protagonist Mara Forrests casts aside any doubts that you may have about her capabilities to confront danger. The first scene depicts her hyping herself up for the mission at hand, a chapter to close on Edward Crow, who is a missing person and owner of the now closed Crow Country theme park. Already you may have questions, but the game doesn't waste too much time on introductions, and before you know it, you're investigating the theme park. The camera sits in an almost isometric viewpoint, but it isn't static. You're allowed to investigate 360 degrees, which is needed to find all the secrets tucked away throughout the environments. Over time, you'll meet a few other poor souls who have wandered into this park, including Arthur Mole, Julie Barron, and others. But I shouldn't spoil the role that they play in the campaign. The narrative has a way of making the most out of unassuming set pieces, or clues that lead to a much larger realization. I'd say the tone of the writing across found notes and dialogue leans more into the realm of dark humor, as the writing attempts to drive you a little mad, but then it reminds you this is just a game. While this is technically a survival horror title, I found Crow Country to be more of a puzzle exploration adventure through a haunted house that plays with your desires to mash action on everything, sometimes leading to negative results. As you progress, the horror elements show themselves more prominently, but I feel like that's due to the enemy's design, where they spawn randomly in areas. Yes, you can avoid them, but they will slowly increase, making traversal more difficult. Surprisingly, I never felt lost or unable to figure out how to progress, but I also attribute that to the in-game hints left scattered across the maps. Crow Country loves to make you read. Every area has posters and notes that line the walls, which provide hints and insights into how you progress. Surprisingly, these notes even talk about puzzles that you may have not even seen yet, which does make things a little confusing, but only because I felt spoiled about future puzzles. Further, after reading the notes once, they'll appear in save room diaries. I didn't really like this feature because I would have rather liked to pull them up from the menu instead of having to find a save point to remember a clue. I suppose you could just write it down or take a picture of it for added immersion if you wanted to. Anyway, be prepared to retain plenty of note information on top of surviving against the mini horrors that this game throws at you. I should also add that if I use shortcuts and map navigation, I would never be far from a save point. Every environment of Crow Country is packed with interactable objects. There's just a lot to look at and understand. The retro polygon graphics were a great angle to present these creative and unique set pieces. There are even clues hidden in the environments themselves that force the player to be attentive and present in every setting, which is elevated by the atmospheric sound design. I really enjoyed the tone of the theme park and how each new area presented a few answers and many more questions that eventually led to a satisfying conclusion, rivaling some of my favorite series in this genre. When it comes to confronting enemies, aiming your gun does take some getting used to. There's also the added step of having to press a button to reload your weapon. This ends up being okay, but the manual nature of combat does cause early frustration and likely early game overs as you try to figure it all out. Still, upgrades can be found for your loadout, and I noticed plenty of ammo laying around for each gun. That said, the environments can also be used against enemies, including exploring barrels and bear traps. There's also these electric things on the walls which will blow up when you shoot them. Yes, these did kill me once. Sadly, this leads to my biggest critique of the game. I don't mind saving often in a survival horror title, but there are too many insta-death environmental puzzles that only come down to trial and error. This means that you can be as careful around enemies as you want, but interacting with the wrong puzzle will likely kill you without warning. Further, some of the the more obtuse puzzles had some very involved means of completion. Thankfully, you do have about 10 hints available from a fortune teller who points you to the right direction. As I traveled deeper into Crow Country, I was immersed in its challenge and design. You explore these very creative areas while fighting to avoid getting stuck in a small corridor full of enemies and no ammo. If the high challenge isn't your taste, there's an exploration mode available that removes damage and turns this survival horror into an exploration puzzle game. Either way, if you play Crow Country, I'm sure you'll find enjoyment in its world. As terrifying as Crow Country can be, it manages to deliver a refreshing puzzle-driven survival horror experience unlike anything that I've played. Its inspirations become blurred as the unique elements of exploration, combat, and puzzle solving deliver something unique that you didn't even realize was missing from this genre. Being developed largely by one person, Crow Country may have started as a project to satisfy their craving for a game that's like this, but it also managed to be exactly what I've been looking for myself. The price of admission is perfect for this theme park, but be sure to save often and avoid those insta-death traps. Noisy Pixel is giving Crow Country an 8.5 out of 10. Thanks for watching. This video is brought to you by our supporters on Patreon. Noisy Pixel is run by a group of gamers providing independent gaming coverage through news, reviews, previews, and more. Check out our Patreon to help support our continued growth and subscribe to keep up with all our future content.
Noisy Pixel.